Thank you. And you can see the slides okay, no problem, because they're on my other screen. So.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yes. Thank you. And as I said, thank you for the invitation. So I am possibly going to be a little bit controversial to all the mining people in the room, virtual room, and certainly a little different, because I'm coming at this from the secondary raw materials point of view, not waste. We don't allow the word waste. And in our view, our materials, recyclers across the world, should be the first point of resource and not the last point of resource, which tends to happen. So obviously limited time. Just very briefly, I'm not going to read them all out. These are all of the members of the ERA. And so that's the Electronics Association. And these are all the members of EBRA. So you can see we've got a very big spectrum right across the continent of Europe. So it's not just the European Union. We allow in the United Kingdom and Switzerland and Norway, and in ERA we've also got Serbia, Turkey as well. So it's the continent of Europe is an important point. Obviously I'm not going to talk too much about what the relevant critical raw materials are, because I'm sure you all know that completely. But what do the producers say? And by producers in this instance, I'm not talking about the miners. I'm talking about the producers of products. So that's E, which is electronic and electric equipment, E, and also batteries. So the people who are actually manufacturing all of the waste now. Although, to be fair, I would say as a general comment that most of the producers, the brand names, are not manufacturers like they were sort of 20, 30, 40 years ago. They're more assemblers. And so this is another part of the problem, in that they don't necessarily know what critical materials are in all the components that they buy. And so it's going to be quite problematic for them, I think, to start having to provide that in specifications. I'm also going to cover what do recyclers say. So I know the title of my session was the technical and economic possibilities, but actually, without a spoiler alert at the end, we need to really start working on this. And so it's what do recyclers say, and where are the critical raw materials needed? So that's a very important point in terms of the circular economy. Again, and I am not a physicist, I really badly failed my chemistry, O-level as it was then, let alone I didn't even attempt physics. But we all know this wheel, raw materials through the mining, design and production, distribution, collection, and then recycling and recovery is the next step, actually. So whilst e-waste and batteries might be a small stream in terms of sort of the overall waste streams, the WHO estimated in 2019 that electronic waste, this is not batteries, electronic waste was 62 million tonnes. Sorry, beg your pardon, 54 million tonnes. In 2022, that rose to 62 million metric tonnes, and by 2030 that's estimated to grow to 82 million metric tonnes. And this is the volume of e-waste, just e-waste alone, across the world. So you can imagine it's becoming a very big mountain. There's a lot of valuable materials in there, and so that's why we're doing our best to try and resolve that and recover all the different materials. So the key ones are cobalt, lithium, nickel, etc., copper, and I've listed some other ones there. And as I said before, we totally recognise that, manufacturing is not going to get all of the materials from secondary raw materials, because 62 million or whatever tonnes compared to however the weight is of what they've placed on the market is minimal. But in our opinion, it should be the primary resource where manufacturers should go to first, and with a complete bias, that should be on the continent of Europe, for to counteract the European products that are placed on the market. Outside of that, for secondary raw materials from other areas, so third countries, as the European Commission calls it. And only when all of those run out, or that's not available, or the quality is not available, or the volume, etc., should virgin raw materials be considered. So I think the word virgin raw materials should be changed to the last raw materials, just an opinion point. Just, we can talk about that later. Very important. So critical raw materials and e-waste. So there was a big study, and you'll be able to scan the QR code if you can do that now, or if you want to be able to download the presentation later. Big study in 2000, finished in 2021, and they looked at a big range of products, but the core amount showed those particular products is where the critical raw materials are found. This is what they all look like. I'm not going to read them all out, mostly because I can't pronounce some of them. But the most important one for me, I want to point this out because of something later, is these little tiny sort of hoops that have got sort of the brown and the blue little sort of covers on the top. And you can see the size of them by, in correspondence, the matchstick. And so I'll talk about them later, but try and remember that. But generally speaking, printed circuit boards will have gold and silver and palladium, but they also have cadmium in, which people obviously don't want and can't use now, lead solder from older ones, the plastics that will have brominated flame retardants in. So, you have to sort of balance what you can recover with the hazardous substances that can be found. This is just, again, a list of the key CRMs in it. I did a study with the European Commission when they were looking at design for recycling recently, and we looked at a server, so a big server cabinet, the big tall cabinets that a lot of offices have, and it's got all of the racks in and everything else. On average, the average one of those weighs 250 kilos. And in that one server, you could find 10 grams of gallium. But of course, we don't know where it is, we don't know what it looks like, and we don't know if that's all in one place. So again, all part of the issue and the fun of being a recycler. But you can see the type of thing and roughly where it is, but it's been able to identify it. And very important when it arrives at a recycler. Critical materials in batteries, I'm sure you all know, you've got lithium batteries, nickel metal hydride, and zinc batteries, and the new batteries that are coming on board, which is obviously the EV batteries that you can see there in the top left, and lithium sodium batteries. And I think every day I get a Google alert with some scientist who's found a way of making a new battery, or recycling them with textiles. I think I saw yesterday. I didn't bother reading that one because it doesn't seem feasible to me. But you can see, we're not talking about one product and one battery. We're talking about a very large number, and all of them have very large volumes when you consider them as a mass in terms of what they can achieve. So this is just batteries by share. And the references there if people want to look further. Producer information. So there is something called the I4R platform, and you can log on there. You have to register, but it's free. And that was as a requirement of part of the WEEE directive. And so producers had to provide information to recyclers on their products, the specification, and what's in it. So in order to tick that box, they invented this platform. And then you can look for not necessarily specific models, which would be good, but generic things. So you can see a washing machine there, and there the sort of like X-ray version is where you could find circuit boards, but that's in that one model. So you can imagine if you're a recycler and you're getting 40 tons of this an hour arriving at your gate, the time it would, and personnel and the space it would take to try and find those circuit boards when they're not all in the same place, is part of the big problem. Here again is the little circuit boards, and you can see those little tiny brown things that I alluded to earlier. Electric toothbrushes, exactly the same problem, but on a much bigger scale because that's a much smaller item. So you have them all come in a mixed stream. How do you disassemble them? How do you get the battery out? But there's also the circuit board, as you can see there in the bottom one. So, how do you do it? And that's actually a very clean looking toothbrush. Believe me, they do not come in looking like that. And so what about all the power tools? You know, they've got batteries in. Not all of them are accessible. They're molded, and so you have to try and break them apart. Tablets, for example, and iPhones. One of our members has found a solution by freezing them overnight, 24 hours at -15 centigrade, and then they're much easier to open without breaking and damaging the battery. And that's important because if you damage the battery, you're potentially inviting a fire or an explosion. But imagine all of that, and if that's big enough on the screen, what it looks like when this pile comes in on a daily basis. Good luck with finding any critical raw materials, the small, anyway, the sort of the more strategic ones in that kind of pile, because you're not going to have time to, you know, stop the conveyor belt, go, oh, look, there's that one, that keyboard there has got, you know, a bigger amount of a critical material. So this is what the producers are giving us, but the practicalities are something different. So this was a table I found in 2017 and 19. But what's possible today? So you can see here actually that copper and nickel were quite low, zinc, and also I found aluminium somewhere or other. No, gold, beg your pardon, gold. I remember looking at it earlier on a small basis, and that certainly has improved because there are far more specialist reprocessors now, taking circuit boards as an example, who can recover. Lithium. So this was from a map that was produced towards the end of last year, and this particular magazine updates it every sort of 3 or 4 months. And here you can see all of the companies who say, in inverted commas, they've got a lithium battery recycling process. I would always say, you know, sort of out of every 10, one might be telling the truth. The others are thinking about it. Some of them haven't got planning permission. Some of them haven't got licenses. Some haven't dug the first hole in the ground. So this is a feasible plan for, say, between now and 2030. But it's not, you know, lithium battery recycling is not at its full capacity yet. But our members are stepping up to the challenge, and obviously that's the same around the world. So circularity is really linked to producers and recyclers. Otherwise, the circular economy line will just flatline the entire time. If producers do not commit to purchasing, trading, however you want to talk about it, with recyclers to recover and use the materials that are recovered, there's no circular economy. It kind of stops the minute it arrives at the recycler's front door. And I was in a conference in Las Vegas 2 weeks ago, a waste conference, and a gentleman, I won't tell you the name of the producer, but I asked him, you know, would they commit? And he said, you can't use the plastic from e-waste. I know that's not CRM, but you can make traffic cones. And I was kind of like lost for words at that point. And so we do need that commitment from producers, you know, because otherwise, what's the incentive? But I've got a few more quick slides to finish on. So 3 core factors: the marketplace, the technology, and the economics. So where are things actually built now? You know, we have to all admit that most products, most electronic products, are made in China, as you can see from this chart, the US slightly, but, you know, the European Union and Great Britain are way down on that scale. So where the manufacturing is where, you know, the producers are really looking to use that recovered recycled content. And in our mind, if they're going to continue to put products on the European market, they should be using European recycled content. But it's the location is you know, a factor because of transport and logistics. Is it technically feasible to recover all the CRMs from e-waste and waste batteries? And as I've said to many a consultant who's designing a battery passport or a digital product passport, they might be in there, but that doesn't mean you can find them and get them out and identify them and recover them. So are they easy to locate? Can you identify them? Years ago, I think it was Panasonic said to me, how could it be improved? And for their hard drives. And I said, well, if you made the hard drives with a neodymium magnet, bright red, because it doesn't matter if it's inside the computer, as they're recycled, the recycler can spot them. You know, when you have sort of 5 or 6 tons generated each day, to sit there and read the label on the back is very time consuming. So colors is really easy. Can you actually remove it? Oh, sorry, let me just turn that off. It was just to remind me to stop talking. Can you actually identify at a component level? Years ago, Xerox, I think, were the first company who actually turned around and said, our photocopiers we can swap out the components. And that's how they extended the life of photocopiers. Brilliant concept, many years above, everybody else. And that's what producers should be thinking about today. If you go back to that circuit, that picture of the X-ray picture of the washing machine, if all of the circuit boards could be placed in one location and it was a pull-out drawer slot, even if it needed a special key, then that saves time, and saves money, and it makes it more feasible and more practical. Thinking about those little tiny spiky things I kept talking about on the slides, they're an electrical connector, and the top of it is actually tantalum. And you can imagine, bearing in mind the matchstick, if you're going to recover any volume of tantalum, of which it might only be one of those or two of those in each product, it's not going to be particularly viable. So it's not feasible, certainly not at the moment, but obviously AI is improving. So let's say, is it technically possible at this particular time? Another really key point is it economically feasible? So it's all very well doing this, and recyclers will go, yes, we can, concrete an extra sort of 5 hectares and set aside a storage area and employ 100 new people to sort and look for this and manually dismantle things. But no one's going to pay for it. The producers certainly are not that keen, or don't seem to listen. They go deaf when I ask them a question. But you have to look at the personnel costs, the energy costs. Because if a recycler is going to invest millions of euros in developing a plant, a piece of equipment, putting aside the personnel, the training, the health and safety and insurance, then they need to know that they're going to get their money back from a CapEx point of view. If there's no market for it, remember everything's sort of made in China nearly now, if there's no market for it within Europe, then they're not going to have enough to recover to be able to sell it at a global price. So it happened a few years ago, and the company who were doing fluorescent powders stopped because they just couldn't sell the product. And if you look at lithium, so in South Korea, my understanding is that they are paying. Oh, I just skipped one. They are paying $1,000 a ton more than US or global recyclers can do. So that's why, the economics, $1,000 a ton is a lot of money. I'm just going to see if I can go back. I should be able to. So economically feasible. So if there is a market and Europe can compete, then recyclers will step up and do it. And I think actually that was my last slide. So I'm sorry if that was a little bit rushed. I hope you understood me okay. And if there are any questions, I'll be pleased to answer them.
Julianne, thank you so much. Absolutely fantastic and really, really interesting. Everyone, round of applause for the wonderful Julianne Adams. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Julianne, we've got time for just one question. I was wondering actually if Emily, if you're willing to turn on your microphone, I can spotlight you because you've put a question in the chat. I wondered if you just wanted to ask it to Julianne.
Yeah, but that's great that I also get the opportunity to just say thank you so much for that, Julianne. It's something that I don't know that much about, and I feel like I learned an awful lot in 20 minutes there. So thanks. The question I had is about swath. So we know that you're making that face, but it's basically we're hearing that a lot of particularly processors are counting swath, which is basically the offcuts when they're forming an ingot as part of their recycling targets. Given that you've made that face, I just wondered if you had any suggestions for us avoiding this, because obviously it's miscounting towards the end figures and it's kind of skewing the market.
Absolutely. So the European battery regulation, and there are many parts of that which are still being discussed. So one of them is the recycling efficiencies and recovery of material targets. And there is the difference of production waste and manufacturing scrap. So if it's production waste, so it's the offcuts and they go round in a big truck to the beginning of the process, and they get smelted and brought back into the same outputs, they're not allowed to count. If it's manufacturing scrap, so it has to go off-site, gets consigned as waste, then at that point it can be counted as recycled content. So it was something that was really pointed out as a loophole, and I think we have it covered.
Awesome.
So you can look in the batteries rig, and you'll see that the definitions is one answer.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for that question, Emily. And I love it as well in terms of all of us being very, very happy to use terminology and then say, this is what I think I mean by it. And one of the words that you used, Julianne, was virgin materials. And I've been messaging some of the others in the meeting. And I think from the mining perspective, no one's ever heard of the term virgin materials before. So that's really interesting. Just different terminology being used. But ultimately, at the end of the day, as we know, this material is precious, and we should respect it and try and keep it in circulation as much as possible. So
it will run out eventually. So
exactly. Fantastic. So with that, Julianne, thank you so much. And thank you for coming and spending time with us. Round of applause.
Thank you.